This is MRN Out Loud on MRN.com, presented by Bloomin' Mondays at Outback Steakhouse. And also brought to you by Hercules Tires. Ride on our strength.
MRN Out Loud, presented by Outback Steakhouse with you. Woody Kane alongside Joey Meyer and Fox Sports analyst Ricky Craven joining us this week on the program. We're going to talk about what happened at Dover and what we think might happen coming up at Talladega. And you have a little experience at Talladega along the way. But first, Kyle Larson breaks a 75-race winless streak, and that has to get to the point where you're going, man, am I ever going to do it again? Well, he did.
Yeah, I think it's an amazing job, too, because the pressure that's associated with having a winless streak can sometimes be paralyzing. But you could see this coming. He's been gaining momentum very, very fast at Darlington and in Indianapolis. And he finally broke through.
You know, what I found interesting was before the race started, Denny Hamlin was clearly celebrating his 500 start. Mm-hmm. FedEx made a huge thing. So the template was set. He was going to sit on the pole, which he did. Mm-hmm. He was going to go out and dominate the race, which for the first part of the race he saw. And if it wasn't going to be him, it was going to be one of the other three drivers that have been successful all year, the Kevin Harvicks, the Kyle Busches, and maybe the Brads or Joey's.
Truex,
one of those guys. Joey, God forbid, didn't even get to start the race.
How weird is that?
Right, so when you start Dover and you look at the monster, you're expecting, okay, some guys won it 11-plus times. You figure Jimmy's going to do good. Kyle Larson really wasn't the guy that you rolled the dice and go, that's the guy I'm pinning on. And boy, did he make a lot of guys look bad with a 4 or 5 second lead there at the end of that race.
Yeah. Joey, I got to celebrate a little bit because I actually picked him on our show yesterday.
Did you? All right.
Awesome. Really?
But I did only because of his body of work. He's been outstanding at Dover. He's done everything.
He's won in an Xfinity car, just not a Cup car.
Yeah, and he's found ways to lose at Dover in the Cup car. And but it was a bit of a flyer because of everything that you described, Woody, coming into the show. But this young man has not completely. He hasn't met his expectations.
Yeah,
I think he's got an enormous talent.
Yeah, no, we talk about it every weekend. The thing about when Kyle Larson or these guys compete on a line, he's always over that line a little bit. So when he makes a mistake, it's exaggerated, and he simply never makes a complete race because he's always getting in the wall, spun out on his own at the Brickyard. Like how a guy that runs the dirt with him and Christopher Bell so successfully and spins out on his own on a car that people say you can't spin out anymore, right? That's how much on the edge he is. But clearly yesterday had a perfect race and executed it for the entire 400 laps.
Yeah, I can't really speak to that because I got a history of doing the same thing.
We also need to point out that Kevin Harvick got another top 10 finish, a 4th place, and that means, Joey,
free
Bloomin' Onion, Bloomin' Monday today. Go by Outback Steakhouse. Tell them Kevin Harvick got a top 10 finish. Give me that onion. A little bit later on, we'll tell you how you can win some free tires via Hercules Tires. It's free to register. Once a month, they give away a free set of tires. We'll tell you how you can enter later on in the program. But Ricky, as we roll along here, this is the first race of round 2, and a lot of guys go into round 1 saying, just don't do anything stupid, just don't do anything crazy, and let other guys knock themselves out. Can you do that in round 2, or do you have to raise it up a notch?
Oh, no, I don't think you can be careful at all. And, the challenge at Dover is that if you try to race cautiously, you get run over. But if you race carelessly, you
do the running over.
wipe out a race car, or do the run over. Right? It's. I think the real challenge is just for drivers to overthink it, be in a position where they have to go to Talladega needing a good finish, maybe even a win, and I'll tell you that's a hard way to race.
It is.
That's a hard way to race at Dover. I think that Joey is probably more qualified to give definition of all the ways to lose or all the craziness of Talladega because of his experiences and his talent. You are so dependent on the spotter, and you control much less at Talladega than you do at Dover or Kansas as a race car driver.
Or even the Roval, for that matter. I mean,
I agree.
You mentioned the guys. Joey Logano had trouble before we ever got the green flag. Chase Elliott, a hero the week before, blows up immediately here at Dover, and he has some trouble. You had Clint Boyer going to the back there, and then you've got 4 guys on the outside looking in. Also, Ryan Blaney has trouble a little bit later on in the race, but some guys that we didn't expect. It shows you the unpredictable nature of this format.
You know, when we talk about the longevity of these races, you know, the 400 miles and the 500 miles and the endurances of it, it gets overlooked, the reliability that we've come to get used to on these race cars.
Mm-hmm.
But we saw yesterday why these races still need to be 400 miles and 500 miles. It's still a little bit of an endurance race. We saw an unusual characteristic of a Team Penske car having a hub failure, a Team Penske having a rear gear failure, Hendrick Motorsports having an axle come out of their car. I mean, these things are still mechanically genius-built cars, but we still have problems.
You know what's ironic about what happened to Joey yesterday and some of the other craziness, the mechanical challenges, is that it was a year ago that Jimmy Johnson had a ball joint explode.
How do you even explain something like that?
Right.
Yeah.
Can any of us remember a ball joint failing?
No.
Right? And so, I mean, it's just crazy sometimes what Dover does to a race car.
You saw the points up a moment ago on the screen. Then you've got guys like Joey Logano, Clint Boyer, Chase Elliott, and Ryan Blaney needing to have a good race coming up at Talladega. They're on the outside looking in because we'll eliminate 4 drivers here over the next 2 races, Talladega and then Kansas coming up next. And as we look at those guys, you're to the point now, with the exception of Kyle Larson, anybody can still have themselves get kind of wedged out of this thing through no fault of their own.
And I don't think it's time to panic for anyone. Maybe Ryan Blaney goes there knowing that, you know, he's got to have a top 5 finish to have a chance at Kansas, but the rest of them still are still kind of congested. From Brad on back is still in play.
You know, the interesting thing, you look at that list and we go to Talladega, as much as a wild card, we'd like to talk about it. Who would you bet against? Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano, Chase Elliott. Those are all winners at Talladega. Only one guy can win. You know, that's the interesting thing about that place. But a lot of guys can get wrecked there. That's the difference.
And I also think the flip side is when you just look at Dover as an example, every week there's a small group of drivers that are contenders to win. Right? So you say, this thing favors a Kevin Harvick, Martin Truex, Kyle Busch, right? Generally speaking.
Yep.
At Talladega, the flip side of this whole discussion is Ryan Blaney can win. Clint Boyer can win. Heck, anybody can win.
Yeah, it's circumstantial. You can see this is a place where the lower funded teams have a legitimate shot to win this race.
Right. And that in itself, I think, kind of changes the dynamic also, because these drivers have kind of gotten used to racing each other. You know, the cream rises to the top this time of year. But
now the whole bowl is cream.
The whole bowl is cream. Yeah, it could be butter.
All right, it's a bowl of cream edition here of MRN Out Loud. Ricky Craven is with us. We'll be back right after this.
G'day, America. It's the moment you've all been waiting for. That's right, Outback Delivery is here. Now you can enjoy all your Outback favourites anywhere. Our signature centre-cut sirloin at home.
It's here.
Or game day party platters with kookaburra wings that'll have both teams cheering.
It's here.
Or steak and lobster for a date night at home.
It's here.
Head over to Outback.com and place your orders, because Outback Delivery is here. Outback Steakhouse. Aussie rules. Delivery availability varies. Delivery charge may apply.
It wasn't just built to be a museum. It was built to be a shrine to the history, heritage, and future of the sport we love. Visit the NASCAR Hall of Fame and see how Petty, Earnhardt, and hundreds of other NASCAR legends became heroes. Watch their most electrifying moments, experience realistic racing simulators, and much more. Plan a trip to the NASCAR Hall of Fame in Charlotte. Tickets at NASCARHall.com. NASCAR Hall of Fame. This is our sport. This is our house.
For 5 decades, the Motor Racing Network has been the voice of NASCAR. And now, it's time to tell our story.
They are in turn 2 in front of Mike Joy.
With help from some of the sport's iconic voices.
Oh, crap! And I spin around.
Here comes Richard Petty.
I'm Fred Armstrong. Join me for MRN's newest podcast series. MRN Presents 50 Years, the voice of NASCAR. Available for download on MRN.com and wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
It's always good to win, but to end a winless drought was good. But it's not a shock either. I feel like we've been running really well this year, aside from the beginning of the year, and even in the beginning of the year we were still had some good speed. I was just making a lot of mistakes. So we've been able to clean up what we've been doing on race days and executing and going about the races more patiently. So our car's been getting better the last couple months, so it was good to dominate a race like we did today.
And dominate he did. He led the final 73 laps, 75 starts between wins. And to your point, Ricky, this is only Kyle Larson's 6th win overall as long as he's been in the series. And I find that kind of hard to believe, but it's right there in black and white.
Yeah, I agree. But he's in the second or third inning of his career.
Yeah,
and Woody, I heard something yesterday that surprised me, that with the win, this is the first time a Ganassi car has advanced into the
round of 8, yeah. Wow.
That surprised me a bit.
Yeah, what's interesting, too, is that something we talk on the show a lot of times is that race teams are always trying to find solutions to problems.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can identify a problem, it's real easy to fix. But when you don't have speed, there are so many variables to try to find that speed. Well, that's one of the things Ganassi has had all year with the 1 and the 42, and Kyle Larson clearly said that. We just had to clean up our mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Our cars have been fast. Kurt Busch has been performing well. Whenever you see Kurt Busch having a problem, it's because he's hit the wall or there's been a problem on pit road, but he's always running good, and Kyle Larson has always been running good. And for those guys to get this win right now, I think it breaks the seal, and you might see him get another win before Homestead.
Is that a real feeling when you finally kick the door in that it's kind of like, now I can just go race?
Yeah, I think the big difference is the closing laps of a race. So if you're engulfed in a long winless streak, you can perform really well, and where it really starts to tighten up would be the last 10% of the race if you're leading.
When you hear those imaginary sounds and all that,
and more where you just become preoccupied with being perfect and you can't race tight. You have to race loose. And I think the greatest illustration of that would be Alex Bowman. He had come close. I felt like he tightened up late in the race at Kansas and maybe a few other times. But then in Chicago, after he lost the lead to Kyle, he said, no
not
more. Today.
Yeah.
And
how about the run he had at the Roval, too, when he knew I've got to gain some spots here and feeling ill and drives his guts out all the way up to second place and into the next round?
Yeah, he's been a very interesting story. And I've enjoyed the heck out of it because, it's fun when it's not obvious. And Alex is, by most people's measure, he's exceeded expectations in that we just know very little about him. But, he's been in the playoffs for the second consecutive year. He's now a Cup winner. And I think he's still got some noise to make.
I think so, too. I think you're right. He's really shown that he can get it done. And then he had the whole thing with Bubba Wallace after the race at the Roval, put all that out of his mind. And by the way, he was our one-on-one feature guest in the pre-race show this past weekend. We didn't play all of that. The rest of it is going to be on NASCAR Live coming up this Tuesday night at 7 o'clock with Mike Bagley, so make sure you check that out.
One of the things we see at Dover in the past that we haven't seen in the last 2 races with this configuration of race car is the track widen out at Dover. It's taking rubber, but in a unique way. We look at a lot of tracks with VH1 or spray or whatever word you want to use to try to widen that track out. Well, Dover used to automatically do that by itself. In your opinion, why aren't we seeing that as much as we used to, specifically with this configuration of race car?
Yeah, Joey, I think they're going so fast through the middle of the corner now that the higher lane is just simply too much longer, too much distance to overcome what they're doing on the bottom of the racetrack.
Bowman made it work a little bit yesterday, but not for a long stretch.
And I think there's probably some value in it aerodynamically, right, by not being in the wake of the car in front of you. But when you look at the line that Kyle Larson was using, which was
the shortest way around,
almost within inches of the apron,
right,
and then you listen to how little he was out of the accelerator,
right.
It's going to be hard for that to come into play. And I think a lot of drivers are worried about that. I felt like there was 2 or 3 lanes. There was just no speed in the second and third lane.
If we move forward, they're running a test this week. RCR is running a 2021. It's a NASCAR test for the new gen. Is it new gen?
Yeah.
It was 7, and now it's like next gen or whatever. Yeah, but
if you had to make some changes, just looking forward for Dover specific race, do we go less downforce? How do we go? What direction?
It's tough because I truly believe that the tire is the key contributor in the whole equation. You know, it's like that's the connection between the racetrack and the race car, and the tire, and to some degree. And what I mean is making alterations if the tire will support it, the structure of it. Changing compounds is a lot less expensive than changing cars.
Right? I mean, that's a part of the reason of doing this in the first place, right? To make the cars more consistent and standard and save the teams money so they don't have to build 8 different types of race car.
I have to say that, number one, if you think I have a solution, you're way overestimating me. But we've really gone from one end of the scale to the other end of the scale in terms of rules packages. And there's been some great racing this year. Just every now and then we're going to have a track where somebody dominates. And, you know, we saw a glimpse of that yesterday.
We saw it from Truex a couple of times in round 1.
Yeah, and my Dolphins are undefeated, or they're winless, right? And they're
unwinnable.
They've lost by like 150-6. I mean, but nobody's complaining about how bad the NFL is, and I think that's a key point in what you're saying. Every once in a while, somebody hits on something. Clearly, the 42 did. And didn't matter what track he's at, he's going to win that race by 5 or 6 seconds.
I got to tell, I don't want to come off the rails here, okay? But
go ahead. Joey does it all the time.
How do you go from 10-6 to like nothing's working? And I'm going to answer my own question: is that so much of sports and so much of auto racing is right here? You know, like if you think you can, you got a chance. But if you think you can't. If you think you can't, you're done.
Yeah, we always said for the last 9 years, especially with Brad, if you want to see how good your car is, we need to get him to screw up early.
Yeah.
Because then he'll show you how good the car is instead of going, I'm not very good here. Oh, no, you just sped on pit road. Oh, my God, I'm really good here.
I got to catch up. I got to make it happen. I just think that's underrated in racing in particular compared to other sports, the momentum aspect, the teamwork aspect, because everybody focuses on the driver and the equipment, but there really is something to momentum and teamwork in this sport as much as others.
No, it's critical. It's worth so much. I'll tell you the most painful thing for me as a driver going back to the day is when your crew chief would come to you and say, we've got the most horsepower Hendrick Motorsports has ever produced.
Oh, boy.
And then you go out and you qualify 23rd. And you say,
like, what happened?
You know, it's like, because what really matters is that the team loves you. The pit crew thinks you're the best driver on the track. And you wouldn't want to race with anybody but your guy. Like that feeling, gosh, that doesn't get any better than that.
That's worth a couple of tenths anyway, isn't it?
I think it's worth 100 horsepower.
There you go.
Even with a tapered spacer.
Another time out here on MRN Out Loud. Ricky Craven is alongside. We'll talk a little Xfinity racing when we come back.
Here's your chance to win a set of your very own Hercules tires. Go to HerculesTires.com/MRN. Simply register, and each month we'll give away one set of tires. Hercules Tires has the value, selection, and industry-leading mileage coverage to get you wherever you need to go, no matter where the road takes you. Register now for your chance to win a set of Hercules tires at HerculesTires.com/MRN. Hercules Tires. Ride on our street.
G'day, America. It's the moment you've all been waiting for. That's right, Outback Delivery is here. Now you can enjoy all your Outback favourites anywhere. Our signature centre cut sirloin at home.
It's here.
Or game day party platters with kookaburra wings that'll have both teams cheering.
It's here.
Or steak and lobster for a date night at home.
It's here.
Head over to Outback.com and place your orders because Outback Delivery is here. Outback Steakhouse. Aussie rules.
Delivery availability varies. Delivery charge may apply.
Hey guys, Corley Joy. Join me and my friends Lauren Fox and Daryl Mott on the Sunday Money Podcast as we talk racing.
Listen, a lot's happened. We talk about the race and your spectacular sixth-place finish.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Daryl, maybe you should start off by telling us why you weren't here last week.
And just life.
What is the biggest difference this week? Because you look a little more pregnant.
I found out I have a third nipple.
It's Sunday Money on MRN.com, iTunes, Spotify, or wherever else you listen to podcasts.
There's our next promo.
I think it's confidence, obviously. Going into Kansas and Texas, we can just go in there and know that, we're firing on all cylinders and we can go in there and win. So it's just having confidence on your first lap you hit the track, and I think we're going to go in there next round and really be one to fight with.
Cole Custer wins, and how about that gold Miles the Monster trophy? That looked really cool. 7th win of the season for Cole. Xfinity guys are off this weekend heading into Talladega. They'll be back the following week at Kansas. Eliminated after round 1, John Hunter Nemechek, Justin Haley, Ryan Sieg, and Brandon Jones. But several different guys had trouble on the Xfinity side, almost like the Cup Series side.
Yeah, it was a volatile race for sure, and I've been so impressed with Cole Custer. You know, all the focus being primarily on Christopher Bell for good reason, and he's matched him this year.
Yeah. Remember, 3 years ago even, you could barely get Cole to look at you. He was just such a shy, withdrawn person, and he'd do an interview like this, and now he's come out of his shell. He's winning races. That gets back to your point about attitude and momentum earlier.
Yeah, I think it's another example of confidence, right? Just, having the confidence to be who you are, and when you're winning, you're not nearly as apprehensive. It's a lot of it's also growing. You know, and he's got to remind ourselves most of these guys are very, very young people.
Yeah, they are. It's been cool to see him come out of his shell, though.
Saturday morning, we're talking with Rick Corelli and Chris Lambert. They spot for the 18 and the 19 there over at the Gibbs cars. They had a meeting, and they're like, okay, we have to get to the end of the race. Brandon Jones is waiting to try to work his way up to the field and get a good, solid finish to try to advance in the playoffs. We don't need to take ourselves out of the race, be wary of your teammates and all that. Go down and turn 2.
How'd that work out?
Took 2 of them out right. Like,
it did. Wow.
Yeah. So it was, but it's interesting how all the planning that goes into trying to make a good race, and then the monster bites up. We see that so often as those cars climb out of that hole. The cars get light. They get out from underneath you on them new cold tires. Ends up wrecking yourself and one of your teammates. But the Christopher Bell and the Cole Custer performance, somebody still has to rise to the top, because who else hit the wall coming on the first lap was Tyler Reddick.
Right.
Those two guys that you see, Cole Custer and Christopher Bell, they are still, I think they're a little bit above, because they're not making those mistakes that we see Tyler making just a little bit of.
Yeah, the question to me, Ricky, is everybody's been talking big 3 all year in the Xfinity series with Bell, Custer, and Reddick. Who's that 4th guy? Who can sneak in there and take this thing away, similar to what Joey Logano did on the Cup side last year?
The only guy that I think can do that, in spite of being sort of benign during the regular season, would be an experienced driver, and that's Justin Allgaier. And
Joey's been saying that for quite a while.
Yeah,
I keep waiting.
He won 2 stages at Dover on Saturday.
I mean, he's a year removed from 5 wins. You know, he was fantastic,
Right.
but they just, for whatever reason, can never climb over that hill. You know, they're on that win. They're the team that's on the winless streak. You know, and they're trying to bust through that seal. The other guy that I thought was very interesting, and he's so quiet about it, is Chase Briscoe.
Yes.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the last 2 or 3 weeks, you're like, where's he been all year long?
Yeah, he wins the pole.
Yeah, and wins and then run good all weekend long. So he's the other guy that all of a sudden is that sneakiness that's right there in the picture.
Joe, you know what's fun about Chase Briscoe is that we've actually watched him this year evolve from I want to be a NASCAR driver to being a very legitimate NASCAR driver. And it wasn't until maybe a month ago, listening to an interview with Chase, I realized how little experience he has, how little seat time he has on asphalt.
Yeah, he's done a lot of dirt stuff, a lot of sports car stuff, and but not so much here.
Right. So, with that considered, he could make noise as the further we go. And let's face it, you get to Miami, you're one of those 4. And I'm not trying to be master of the obvious, but you do have a 25% chance.
You do. That's just math.
Well, and when you think about Homestead, you think about how you have to run Homestead, right? Christopher Bell's going to run against the wall. Cole Custer is going to run against the wall.
Tyler Reddick will hit the wall.
Nobody thought Reddick was going to be able to do that last year, and he did.
Chase Briscoe is going to be right there, slammed against the paint. And those 4, like I just mentioned, 4 drivers at Homestead, you wouldn't be surprised if it was that 4.
He said quite a bit lately that he was part of the most recent Xfinity Series test there, and he said a lot that we had a great test. We were so fast. That is as excited as you'll see him when you ask him about that test. He just lights up. He knows if they can get there, they've got a really good package for that track.
Yeah, that's encouraging for the team.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we look forward to Xfinity Series racing, they'll take a week off and come back at Kansas, as we said. The Truck Series gets back to it. It hasn't been, but it seems like 100 years since they last raced. We had a lot of guys, especially on the Thor Sport side, drop out because of engine issues. They tried I don't know if appeal is the right word, but they tried to lobby NASCAR to give them a break on that, and it did not work. But
we tried.
Yeah. Well, they got to do something, right? You got to try. But now going forward, you had Grant Enfinger, the regular season champ, knocked out. Johnny Sauter, a former champ, knocked out. Who's going to be the guy in the Truck Series?
Well, just from a personal perspective, I'm enjoying the heck out of Ross Chastain.
Me too. Yeah, he's been fun to watch, hasn't he?
Free watermelons for everybody.
And I like the fact that he owns up to nothing. We've talked about it on the show 100 times. I get so frustrated when a guy races you hard.
Yeah.
And then goes, man, I hate to do that. I don't like racing that way, and it's not really my persona. Ross Chastain has said, I'm going to race you that way. That is my persona, and that's how I got here.
I'm with you.
Deal with it.
And not deny it
Deal
later.
with it,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to put a smile on my face and drive through you with the smile on my face, and I love it.
Listen, something I heard yesterday that's along those lines, and, you know, drivers are so difficult post-race.
Mm-hmm.
And I give them a pass most of the time because I lived it, and you've been in a car for 3.5 hours, and your IQ goes down dramatically when you get out. You know, all things. You know.
See, I think it happens when you put the helmet on.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
it squeezes you. Yeah.
That doesn't help, but the fumes don't help either.
Yeah.
So, but a driver said yesterday he was complaining about a lap car, and he said, yeah, I'm really upset because he was aero blocking me.
Right.
And I thought.
It's like when the dog goes, what?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
No, don't go there.
Yeah.
You know,
and as if that's unfair somehow.
As if we need to bring that into the equation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, you know, like I don't think that the
things Cale never said.
Yeah, there's another one.
right.
Let's add that to the list.
And I just don't think it's appealing for our race fan.
Yeah,
they don't want to hear that.
I agree. The other guy that it seems like this may be too strong that has kind of been forgotten about. Don't forget, Brett Moffitt won the championship last year.
Wow,
he's now leading again with a different team. That's very difficult to do.
And he's better this year than he was last year.
Mm-hmm.
I really believe that. Just because he's not – he obviously had success last year, and he's obviously always had ability, but now he's even matured more to the point where he doesn't beat himself, doesn't make mistakes.
And last year he won with the David-style team. He was competing against Goliath. Now he's part of more of a Goliath GMS-style race team. What they did last year was amazing, taking a manufactured engine all the way up to Homestead. With the rules changes in the playoffs, they were kind of forced to run a spec motor at Homestead. And then they said, okay, we'll take your spec motor and still beat you. And
hold my beer.
Right. and now he's had the opportunity to run that engine with GMS all year long. And like you're saying, I think they're with a stronger team, and he's been extremely quiet. Like Ross is making a lot of headlines for whatever reason, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent in winning these races, but Brett Moffitt's right there.
Yeah, he absolutely is, and they'll be back in action this weekend at Talladega Superspeedway. All kinds of cool changes there. You can see more of that at MRN.com. Huge upgrades to the facility, the infield area. Make sure you check that out if you're planning to head down to Talladega, and look at it anyway. It's really fantastic to check out. We're going to look a little ahead at Talladega when we come back.
G'day, America. It's the moment you've all been waiting for. That's right, Outback Delivery is here. Now you can enjoy all your Outback favourites anywhere. Our signature centre cut sirloin at home.
It's here.
Or game day party platters with kookaburra wings that'll have both teams cheering.
It's here.
Or steak and lobster for a date night at home.
It's here.
Head over to Outback.com and place your orders because Outback Delivery is here. Outback Steakhouse. Aussie rules.
Delivery availability varies. Delivery charge may apply.
It wasn't just built to be a museum. It was built to be a shrine to the history, heritage, and future of the sport we love. This is our house, the NASCAR Hall of Fame, and it's packed full of classic and present-day cars, including Petty's, Earnhardt's, and Waltrips, as well as interactive experiences, realistic racing simulators, and much more. Plan a trip to the NASCAR Hall of Fame in Charlotte. Tickets at NASCARHall.com. NASCAR Hall of Fame. This is our sport. This is our house.
Jeff Gordon has come from virtually nowhere.
He's one of NASCAR's all-time greats.
For the 93rd time in his career.
A pioneering champion.
Be at the right place at the right time.
The kid who took on the good old boys and changed NASCAR.
We started to go toe-to-toe from Earnhardt.
MRN presents a 10-part podcast series that traces Jeff Gordon's rise to NASCAR legend. Jeff Gordon, the colorful career of the Rainbow Warrior. Available now at MRN.com and your favorite podcast source.
I've said this before about super speedway racing, it always evolves. You don't have to change the rules of the cars to watch super speedway racing evolve. It's the teams and the drivers that figure out new ways to gain an advantage on someone. And whether it was this rules package or last year's or 10 years ago, drivers and teams are going to figure out ways to become stronger. And what you've seen here recently is the manufacturers really find a way to become selfless within each other to be able to gain an advantage amongst their competition and control the race. And I feel like Chevy's kind of taking that to the next level here recently. To where we all have to figure out a way to beat that. They did a very good job in these first few, super speedway races where, they controlled the race on us, and we need to, figure out a way to take them down again, which we know we can. We know we have the speed in our cars, as Fords to be able to do that. We just all have to be on the same page together. And a lot of times it's easier said than done, right? I mean, we all still want to win. Right, we all want to be competitors. The facts are, as much as everyone works together, there's only one winner at the end of the day, right? And then you can't get the same amount of points if you finish fifth as you do for first. So those are the things that all these teams have to work through to try to figure out how to be okay with it. And that's where personalities and the human element becomes a big player in that.
Several things.
Yeah, there was a list of stuff to talk about
things.
there.
We will always call Daytona and Talladega restrictor plate racing. Regardless.
It's just jargon.
We don't run a restrictor plate where you want a taper spacer. A Talladega style race is a strength in numbers. Mm-hmm. Okay, Kyle Larson didn't need anybody around him at Dover. Mm-hmm. At Talladega and Daytona, you need cars around you, pushing you or helping you from behind. Ford did a really good job 2 or 3 years ago. When I was over on the 2-car, we got together with Stuart Haas. There were essentially 3 to 6 cars working together. We all won races. One of those drivers had won. Ford had won a lot of races in a row. Mm-hmm. Toyota said, we need help. We don't have enough strength and numbers to do what those guys did. They went to Chevrolet, Hendrick Motorsports, and said, we're willing to work with you if you work with us. Boom, Denny Hamlin wins the 500 with the help of Chevrolets. Mm-hmm. The people in Detroit said, that will never happen again. Chevrolet will not help Toyota. We're going to do it on our own. Well, now Chevrolet has more Chevrolets in the field. So it keeps ramping up. It went from the Fords to the Toyota Chevrolet.
And what happened at Talladega last time?
And Chase
Elliott.
Chase Elliott won. So now that's what Joey Logano is referencing is the strength in numbers. And the other key thing, the one small word he said is the selfless mentality. Because that's important, because the Ford camp, okay, has Joey Logano, Brad Keselowski, Kevin Harvick, Clint Bowyer. I could go on. Mm-hmm. Who's going to give up and push the other 3? Very, very difficult decision. The Toyotas have Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex. They have 3 drivers that are going to contend for that position. The Chevrolets have all these guys. If they got lined up behind Chase Elliott, nobody was passing Chase Elliott, including any Toyota and any Ford. So it's that selfless mentality right now that General Motors and Chevrolet have done a really, really good job at. To when they go to Talladega, you're not just trying to pass Chase Elliott. God knows you're trying to pass the entire RCR camp, the entire JTG camp. You're passing a lot of cars.
So in light of what you just said, I want to challenge you.
Okay.
All right. You're headed.
I'm liking this already.
You're headed to Talladega. Yep. Because and everything that Joey says, I see it. We all see it. We understand it and acknowledge it. However, we'll use Penske as an example. How can any one of those 3 drivers surrender and say, I'm going to help you win this race, Ryan, when none of them are secure?
Right.
So Brad and Joey. And
it's not like any of them are locked in yet.
No. Yeah. Exactly. So I think it's almost like, okay, we have a plan for 80% of the race and then settle it amongst you.
Somebody can throw sand in the gears and the whole thing goes out the window.
So here's
because of how dependent you are with this formula of just, it might be selfless for a big part of the race, but it's going to be selfish at the
some
end.
point. That switch flips off.
And what's interesting about the whole strength and numbers things is you start trying to invade or like be a virus, And as a group of 5, and you're trying to race a group of 20, what do? You've got to make that group of 20 a group of 15.
Divide and conquer.
And you start to try to draft and side draft and break up that group, and you infiltrate the group, and then you can move forward and work on. You're not trying to pass the first place guy. You're trying to break up the 15th place car.
So then you can.
Then the 10th place car. Then the 5th place car. And pretty soon you hope Chase Elliott has 2 cars behind him, and the third car is a Ford or a Toyota. So it's interesting how those guys, it's the strength in numbers. You have to not eat the elephant all in one bite. You can you try to chew it a spoonful at a time, and that's how the mentality goes forward. You take your 5 to try to beat 3 of their guys.
Joey, is there a driver that's at the head of the class in terms of restrictor plate racing, Talladega racing today, or is it so general because of everything we just heard from Joey that it would be more of a team that would be at the head of the class?
What I'm going to say there is a group of drivers that notoriously do well at restrictor plate racing because of one reason: they enjoy it. Right now, I'm going to point out Kyle Busch as the one driver who, in my opinion, is still at the echelon. He's already a Hall of Fame driver with a championship.
He's going.
He's going.
People who don't like him might as well get over it. He's going to the Hall of Fame.
He's like Mark Martin. He despised and never enjoyed restrictor plate racing. And so his thought process already puts him at the back. A guy like Denny Hamlin, Kevin Harvick, Brad Keselowski, who's won more, the Dale Juniors of the world, they loved that type of racing. And it already gave them an advantage. Now, there are guys that will drive around on Sunday and do okay, but they don't enjoy it. They're trying to wait for something to happen to avoid. But you get those group of guys, the Dennys, the Brad, the Kevins, they enjoy it. And that gives them the advantage already. A guy like Joey Logano, they enjoy the kind of racing. So they're already, we talked earlier about the cream of the crop. They're at the top because they simply enjoy that kind of racing. There's nobody on the field that I'm aware of that's more cerebral at a restrictor plate racing than Brad Keselowski. That guy is 5-10 laps ahead of what's going on, the whole chest movement. He foams at the mouth this whole week watching videos and listening to audio of trying to analyze every move from the past 12 races. It's really phenomenal to see behind the scenes how much effort and enjoyment that he goes into Talladega and Daytona style racing.
I think that's always been applicable in our sport, and is that your driver's attitude toward a track typically prevails or contributes to the weekend you're going to have.
Yeah, like some guys don't enjoy road racing, for example.
And I can tell you that when I broke my back at Talladega and I landed on my roof.
I was going to ask you about that because my wife asked me, didn't he leave the track one time? And I looked on YouTube and saw the video. You didn't leave the track, but you tried hard.
And then I left in a helicopter. And it
that was 96.
96 had a profound effect on me. I went into that race my sophomore season, third or fourth in points, within 100 points of the leader, having a great start to the season, and it destroyed my summer. I went back for the second race, and it was the only time in my career that I was preoccupied with not being in control of the car. I was, I don't know how to, I've only told the story a few times, so world, and, almost a claustrophobic effect of being in the draft at Talladega. And I was really never that good there. I finished top 5, but never won.
But that's that mentality that Joey's talking about. Some guys go to super speedways to get through them.
Yes.
Other guys think, how can I win? And when you're in that state of mind, you're not thinking, how can I win? You're thinking, how can I get through this?
No, yeah, and I don't want to push too far forward, but I have to say, along those same lines, I found it ironic that even when the race was over, the 42 team, driver, crew chief, all made reference to Martinsville and the fact that, we're in the next round, but we got to focus on Martinsville because we are not good there. Golly, you always circle at the beginning of the year the places you expect to win and the places you got to do, you got to work overtime.
You're going to have to struggle, yeah.
So 2 thoughts in mind here. You talk about being claustrophobic for a little bit. When did you break through the infamous smoke and it cleared out and you could put it behind you?
Days of Thunder?
Do you remember?
I do, vividly. So I went, now remember, after those injuries, I did take some time off.
Yep.
Came back, sat on the front row for the Coke 600, and may have won the thing if the rear hadn't busted out late in the race. But I came back fine and felt like I was still had that edge. But when I went back to Talladega, went out for practice, and I didn't have any concern, any apprehension until I got in the middle of the draft, car to my right, car to my left, a long line in front and behind me, and I couldn't get out. And I'm running 200 miles an hour, and I'm like, I don't remember how I got hurt the last time I was here. And yeah, I'm only a turn away from it happening again, or a mistake away, and I couldn't get out, and I couldn't lift. Eventually, I kind of wiggled my way out, came down pit road, never said anything to anybody. I expect the people closest to me probably sensed something. And then I went out, and I don't know where I finished, but I got through the weekend, and it got better. But it was
and
never,
you went, whew.
It was never a place that I looked forward to going to. Again.
I don't think you're alone in that.
Yeah, it's and a big part of that is something that Joey and I talked about before we started today's show, is that drivers are most comfortable when they're in control. And we were talking about flying and sitting in the back of the plane, and most drivers are uncomfortable back there, particularly when the weather gets bad.
So the two style tracks, we have Daytona and Talladega this weekend. We look at them from the TV standpoint, or even in the stands, they look similar. They're pretty different. What was the difference from your from the cockpit standpoint of Talladega versus Daytona?
Yeah, Daytona's always had this element of handling where if you didn't have the balance of the car correct, you were eventually you would have to lift even enough so that the cars would separate themselves. In Talladega, that never really existed. Even with a
to the mat, the whole time.
Consequently, you're all clustered, and you simply have no control over your ability to move forward. You have very little. Now, I will say one thing that's very apparent today that wasn't when I was driving is that the art and definition of drafting has become very generalized, that all drivers understand it and can apply it. I don't know if it's because of all the exposure we have to video or the data that drivers share testing, but it wasn't obvious back in the 90s.
Remember the old Dale Earnhardt can see the air thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one guy who did get it and didn't share it with me or anybody else was Jeff Gordon.
Wow.
He identified what Dale was doing with the side drafting, and being able to illustrate it on the racetrack and break away. It was a work in progress, but Jeff became very good at it, and other drivers became very good at it, and there were truly a have and have not mentality back in that era.
It used to go from drafting to pass somebody to now the skill, and again, Brad was very good at it, is being able to manage that front row.
He's still pretty good at it.
He's still very good. Yeah, absolutely. Being able to manage the front row, this configuration and the big spoiler makes it a little more difficult because of the runs going up. And we talk about bubbles behind these cars and popping that bubble. It's a little more difficult to manage that front row. And I think guys confuse the difference between managing a front row and blocking.
Yeah, how fine is that line?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I've identified in the last couple of years, and I think it's going to be so interesting this next weekend to see if it continues, is that forever in Talladega races and Daytona races, there would be a rabbit. There would be a driver you would identify, primarily Dale Earnhardt, and then Dale Jr., and then Brad Keselowski. Those are drivers that the rest of the field would clamor to. And if they would either help get out front, or if they were out front, they would secure themselves to those drivers, sort of with an attitude, all right, I'm with the guy that's going to...
He's going to be up there.
He's going to determine who wins this race. That disappeared a few years ago. And it just became an absolute free-for-all where nobody really had that, what I would call authority. And so who is the authority going into this weekend? And I really don't think there is.
Right. I think that's where the manufacturers come into the play and the strength in numbers. I think that's where we talk about we have kings and queens and pawns. That's how since the manufacturers have gone to this mentality. We saw 2 races ago with the Chevrolets. There was a Chevrolet out front that, in my opinion, was a pawn. and it was clear to where, okay, you have to allow the kings and queens to get around you. And I think that's what you're saying now is that we have a lot of kings. We have a lot of queens. We don't have, Dale Earnhardt was a king. Yeah. Dale Jr. was a king. Guys got in behind, and they were following him off the cliff like Brad Keselowski in a turn 1 at the Roval. Okay,
the lemmings
exactly,
move.
exactly. And we see now we have so many of these kings and queens that everybody attaches himself to different, and nobody stands above the top.
You're never too old to learn, but I always
stop learning to stop living.
Right, I always knew that Richard Petty was the king, but Joey's helping me understand there are
it is like that. Yeah. We got to take a break, but before we do, Joey, we promised the folks we'd tell them how they could win some tires.
Well, what did we give away earlier? We gave away free onions
and tires.
Now it's tires. So once a month we can get free tires. They have to be black.
Yeah.
We only give away black tires.
Yeah.
But once a month you have to be black. That's it.
I didn't know there were anything else.
Exactly right. But to get online, go to HerculesTire.com/MRN. It's HerculesTire.com/MRN. Once a month we draw a name. Boom, 4 tires show up. Hopefully they fit your car, because if they don't fit your car, it's kind of worthless. But we give away tires.
Yeah, absolutely. Onions and tires. You know where to come to get those. So are we breaking again, or we're all wrapped up here? Yeah, we're to the end of the show. Let's tell you what we've got coming up. Yeah, we've got a big week here on the Motor Racing Network. The next episode of 50 Years, The Voice of NASCAR, episode 4 in our podcast series comes up. Last week was Barney Hall. I won't tell you what this week is going to be, but you'll make sure you want to hear that. Then on every Tuesday night, NASCAR Live, 7 o'clock Eastern Time with Mike Bagley. Then we move on to Talladega. 1000bulbs.com 500 practice comes your way on October the 11th. Final practice that same day, later in the afternoon. That is 1:30 and 4:30. Also on Saturday, the Sugarlands Shine 250 at Talladega. That's 1 o'clock Eastern Time. Then pole qualifying that same day at 4:30 on Saturday. The main event, 1 o'clock Eastern Time Sunday, 1000bulbs.com 500. Next race in the round of 8, or rather 12 in the NASCAR Monster Energy Series as they come up and try and advance to the playoffs. Ricky, thanks for being here, man. We appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, Woody, I've had a blast. And Joy, I've always had very high regard for the job you do.
Thank you.
And it's really nice to connect with both of you.
All right, you'll be back here next week. We'll keep watching you on Fox Sports and see what's going to come up ahead. Make sure you tune in. Check it out at MRN.com. We'll see you next week.